So, Amy, I wanted to get started. Thank you for doing this. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Okay, so for those who don't know, Amy, you're Netflix president of advertising, so about 15 years ago, Netflix changed television, and now you're here to change advertising. It's a small mandate.
Exactly.
So can you tell me, I believe the word that was used was by Netflix, I think earlier this year, was to make Netflix advertising formidable.
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 Yes.
Okay, so what does that mean?
So what that really means is, when we got into this business, and we got a lot of slack because we had said we would never get in the advertising business 4 years ago. And so we predicated that participation as, hey, look, we're going to be in the kind of crawl, walk, run phase for quite some time as we build the business, because we made that decision very quickly.
Yep.
And so I correlate formidable to, I would say we're now in kind of starting to speed walk, starting to prove that we have what clients want. We've got great content. We've got great tech that we're building. And we believe that this can be, a growth driver for Netflix.
So is formidable a feeling, or do you have a metric?
Ooh, good question.
Yeah.
Look, I think revenue is always a metric that we're going to look at, and that's a good one. So I would say that. But I do think it's about a feeling in the sense of we feel momentum in the business. And when I come to places like this and see how much advertiser interest there is, how much continued fan interest, you definitely feel that we're headed in the right direction.
So, I want to get to a conversation about scale, but I want to start, though, with because I want to hear your pitch about the quality of Netflix attention, which is very different, right, from, surfing the web. So can you talk to us about that?
Sure. So our whole hypothesis is that, very similar to how the member experience is on the subscription business where we started, that if you create a great member experience, and in the ads world, that means lighter ad loads, it means more frequency capping, right? So we're making sure that members are not getting hit with the same ad.
Right.
That they're coming at great breaks, right? It's not cutting off the middle of a sentence, which is really
frustrating. I can't believe how much that still happens in viewing, actually. It's
correct.
Insane. Yeah.
And so we want to create a great environment, not only for our members, but for the advertisers, right? Because we think that helps them stand out as well. So we have, to your point, all sorts of metrics around the fact that Netflix has people's attention. So we work with measurement partners, like I met with T-Vision this morning. They're a big measurement partner of ours, who actually track how much time is spent eyeballs on screen in terms of paying attention to that, right?
Oh my God.
And then when you look at the completion rates of our 15, 20, 30 second, 60 second ads, 98% completion, all of those things together result in better outcomes for our advertisers.
Right. Well, I'm curious, what have you learned? Because you don't come from a traditional advertising background, right?
I don't.
And you've worked in pretty much every other department of Netflix. And so I'm curious what you have learned that might be contrary to, I think, what people thought when the streaming war started. And Netflix was bringing, binging, ad-free binging. What has surprised you about the audience's appetite for advertising?
Yeah. To your point, I don't have a traditional background, but I think that's been an asset in terms of being able to come and look at what can we be doing differently, and not having the kind of historical baggage of, well, this is the way it's always been done, or this is how we have to do it. So we can kind of start from, a fresh piece of paper and say, what do we want the experience to be on Netflix? And that's really important to us, because that, when you look at the history of what Netflix is, back in the day, it was sort of counterintuitive for the industry at that time to offer all of the episodes at one time.
Yes.
Right? So there are these areas where it just feels like, let's take a fresh look at this and think about what's going to work best for our business, for our customers, and for advertisers ultimately.
Well, I think the number of subscribers who are choosing the ad platform is much higher probably than you had expected.
Certainly it's grown over the years. And, you know, being able to offer a lower cost plan for consumers who are, you know, willing to and want that like price option, that flexibility. Yeah, we're about 65% of all members who are new subscribers are joining the ads tier.
Yes, so they're picking the option. Yes. I mean, the majority are picking the option.
Yes.
Okay, so let's talk about Netflix in the world of Google, Meta, and Amazon.
Yep.
Okay, so you're all here, like, and you know, selling your wares to every brand in the world. And so, just tell me what is the Netflix pitch vis-a-vis those platforms?
Yeah, great question. We see our sweet spot as sort of the intersection of art and science. So having fantastic content that resonates with fans around the world. You know, and I think that's measured by our engagement, by the number of shows that we have in the Nielsen Top 10 every year. So everybody who knows Stranger Things or Bridgerton and can associate the content they're seeing on Netflix. So that intersection of art and then the intersection of science, the tech piece, right? And so obviously the companies that you named have been in this business for tens of years, right? Have a very huge and robust business. And a lot of that has been built on the tech side. But we think there's a real place to play in the intersection of those two things.
Well, I want to talk about something kind of cool you guys did. Was it this year or late last year? K-pop Demon Hunters.
Yes.
Maybe people here have heard of it. Only the biggest movie in Netflix history.
Which is still in our top 10 a year later.
It is
a year
amazing.
Later. It's crazy.
Definitely top 10 in my household.
Good.
So you did a McDonald's K-pop Demon Hunters. What do I even call it?
Happy Meal. It was a Happy Meal.
It was
yes. Yes.
So, I mean, to me, that feels like something that maybe the platforms, that's a very different way to express an ad partnership than the platforms would do at this moment, right?
I think it's more sort of in the traditional, TV vein in terms of theatrical releases or other, marrying of IP and kind of that brand collaboration. But it's been hugely successful for us and for McDonald's. You know, I think playing into the having dueling meals between similar to what you see on the film in terms of the bands. So people pick their fandom picks which side they want to be on. But it's a great collaboration, and those are the types of things that we can offer to our customers, I think, that are really hard to match.
So I'm curious, the genesis of that, was that a Netflix idea, a client idea? Like, how did that, like, it came out pretty fast after the movie hit.
It did come up very fast, and, we've been very, we've said all along that K-pop Demon Hunters kind of surprised us. We didn't know that we had the hit on our hands until it was about 30 days into it. And we saw the consumer behavior and how the song was taking off.
And it was snowballing.
Yeah. And so we've gotten very good at being kind of like a fast follower and being able to kind of fulfill that brand demand. So we were very quickly in talks with a lot of different partners who wanted to capitalize on the IP. And McDonald's showed up in a great way, and it's been a great partnership. So really excited about it.
So I'm curious, in the pipeline, when should brands get involved with the Netflix show?
Yeah, I think, look, there's a lot of different ways and at different times that our clients were having conversations. So some of our conversations are starting very early, and we've got, we've been having discussions for many months, or at this point, often years now, where they want to see, what do we have coming out in 12 months? What do we have coming out in 24 months, right? And we can have talks about future slates.
So they might get involved in even in the development cycle.
Well, at least they know what the content is.
Right.
And they know what the angle, where the creative hook might be. And those are, I think that's really important about our brand partnerships, is we want to make sure that they don't feel forced, that there's something authentic about how they're happening. And it's like playing into the fandom, and it's playing alongside of the content, right? So sometimes the conversations are happening very much in advance, and sometimes people see something's taken off, or they didn't know there was a creative angle, a creative hook, and we have those conversations too. So fast follow, long lead time, both plays.
Well, I'm curious, in your mind, like what makes for a great brand integration and what feels to the audience like they're getting sold to?
Yeah, I think we talked about it a lot, and I know this word gets thrown around a lot, but something that feels authentic and doesn't feel forced, right? So I think, by the way, we had a great example with recently with Running Point and State Farm. So you know Jake from State Farm.
Yep.
Actually shows up in the show, and it played it around the storyline, right? It wasn't kind of pause and we'll insert State Farm. It was very much, like a hot take on how State Farm shows up in advertising.
Right.
And because Running Point is about, ownership of a team, it was a very natural kind of extension, and it worked very well.
And Emily in Paris is an obvious one, right? I mean, lots of luxury brands to feature in
lots
in
of
Emily
luxury brands,
Paris.
yes.
Yep. And so I want to get into some of the other areas Netflix is making a lot of headlines around right now. Podcasts, vertical video, mobile. And so this suggests that Netflix is thinking about attention beyond the living room, beyond the traditional living room. So can you talk about where your attention is around that?
Sure. I think, we obviously do a lot of consumer research and a lot of understanding what's going on in the landscape around us. And we realize that there are moments of truth where we may not have been the first choice, right? Because it may not have been a living room moment. And so those are the areas where when we look at our content offering, how can we expand our audiences? How can we expand that programming to win in those moments of truth when somebody may be picking up their phone on the way to go to work, or having breakfast, or listening to a podcast. So having that type of content available to our members felt like a natural extension of what we're doing already.
Well, so YouTube's trying to become more like Netflix. So I'm going to ask you, is Netflix trying to become more like YouTube?
Is Netflix trying to become YouTube?
Yeah.
Is that what the question was? I don't think, no. I think we are very much, we know what we have in terms of the living room, but there are extensions, right? We want to make sure that we are moving with how consumers are moving.
Right.
And so to the extent that we're seeing these trends and we know people viewing video on mobile, that's an extension. And we think that's an opportunity not only to kind of bridge the content, bridge the living room with mobile, but also find programming that may be more mobile native. And that's a path for us.
Do you like or dislike it when people say Netflix is the everything store?
Well, our mission at Netflix, I'm sure you've heard this a number of times, we want to entertain the world.
Yeah.
And so we know that that means a lot of different things to a lot of different consumers. So having a lot of different choice and content options is important.
Well, so, advertisers are also thinking about formats now, too, in a whole new way. And so I'd love to know, what you're seeing, what inventive things are you seeing happening with advertisers? And is the traditional 30-second format going to be here in a few years?
Yeah. I'll answer the last question first. I think the traditional 30-second ad, yes, for people who are looking to really tell their story and make sure that they're getting attention that we talked about, that format can be a story in and of itself, right?
Right.
So I absolutely am a firm believer that that's going to be around in the future. The first part of the question was...
What kind of innovation are you seeing from advertisers around formats?
Yeah. And we're testing out a lot of new things ourselves. We like to test and kind of learn from our consumers about what works and what doesn't. Look, I think interactive ads, and that CTV expands the capabilities of what studios can do, right? So interactive ads in terms of whether it's polling or sending information to phones, giving consumers an extension from the TV in the living room to find more information about the advertiser or about the brand. I think those are going to be interesting formats that are only going to continue to gain sort of more traction.
We did a headline yesterday about the Vibe in Cannes Lion, and I think with the line we used was that advertisers are telling Hollywood they want to know how their ad performed and prove it, right?
Yep.
So let's talk about how Netflix is showing results to sponsors.
Sure. So I talked about this a little bit at the beginning with attention and the whole hypothesis around making sure that our experience resonates with members, and ultimately that's going to be better off for advertisers as well. So there are a number of studies. I was just talking to one of our folks this morning in Europe, actually. And since the start of the year, we've done over 400 different studies. So as you can imagine, different advertisers are measuring their business in different ways, right? So some are looking at brand lift, some are looking at purchase intent, some are looking to understand, okay, how did that actually result in action?
Yeah, I mean, I don't actually know. Is there a uniform measure across advertising?
There's not a uniform. There's a lot of different metrics that people can kind of pick and choose in terms of how they're measuring the success of their business. So ultimately, we need to serve all of those, right? And we need to make sure that we are providing those types of stats, working with third-party independent measurement. We have our own, certainly, that we're comparing that to, but we have to meet advertisers kind of where they're at, because only they are the ones that know what works for their business, right, and how their investments are made.
Look, I think you're building some tools. Is that?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we are a year into launching our own tech stack. So we launched, actually, our anniversary is on July 1st. That's when we officially turned on all 12 countries that we're in.
Oh my God.
So yeah, so
congratulations.
Thank you. And so we're only a year into this journey, but it's really meant to capitalize on the data that Netflix captures, the ability to personalize the experience, similar to what we do on the content side. We're looking to, offering targeting from that data. So early in the journey, but we're showing a lot of momentum really quickly as we get launched.
I mean, I'm curious what originally, for people, who don't recall, there was an agreement with Microsoft, right?
Yes, there was.
And then as much as you can share, what was the learning inside that suddenly made you realize, like, no, we got to do this ourselves?
Well, Microsoft was a great partner to launch with in a quick fashion, because
it was very fast.
It was very fast. I remember, Reed was on a earnings call, and suddenly we were in the advertising
Netflix
business.
had ads. Yes.
And I think, it was a matter of months before we were actually up and running. So they were a great partner to kick it off and go with. But, we are traditionally a company of builders.
Yes.
And so I think it became very clear early on that if we wanted to maximize the opportunity for ourselves, that we would need to build our own tech stack and kind of be out in the market in a way where we could test and learn and iterate very quickly. And we knew that having our own tech stack was going to let us do that.
Which leads me to the topic everyone's talking about at Cannes Lion, AI. If I hear the term agentic AI one more time, so I'm good. Let's talk about that a little bit. Like, what is Netflix vision of AI assisted advertising? I guess if that's a way to call it.
Yeah, it's so funny Netflix, we've been in this business, like the machine learning, for a long time, just in terms of the personalization and what we're already doing. I think you've hit it on the head. We're testing. We're building our agents, like we're working with industry leaders to figure out what that means. I think none of us know 3 years from now what that's going to look like. We have the luxury, because we're a little bit of a late mover and building our tech stack in parallel, that I do think it allows us to be really nimble and adapt to trends that we're seeing in the marketplace. But I'd be lying if I told you I knew exactly what it was.
You got to figure it out, yeah.
We have to figure it out and see what happens.
Well, I mean, I do think that there's a sort of almost a polar opposite in entertainment, or entertainment versus advertising. In Hollywood, creatives are kind of bristle at AI still, and it seems like advertising is going full speed ahead.
Yep. Yes and no, right? And I certainly think it depends on the part of the world that we're talking about. I think there are certain markets that are more embracing of it, maybe because of the efficiency aspects. And I think that especially here, there are a lot of markets who strongly believe that human creativity cannot be replaced, and nor should we, right?
Right.
And so really finding those moments of inspiration is a human quality that we all want to continue to tap into.
We love humans.
We do love
Okay, let's move to live.
Yes.
Okay. How does live change the advertising proposition for Netflix?
Live has been a huge boost in the arm.
Can we just back up a second?
For sure.
You guys didn't do live until...
We didn't.
And then suddenly, lots of live.
We didn't. And, I've been with the company for 10 years, and I remember having some of these discussions early on, like maybe a year or two into being at the company. and there are really passionate advocates of live. And Bella was one of them, by the way, back in the day. But we were on such a great trajectory at the time. It was like we didn't want to, move resources to really focus, because it is a big technical lift,
right?
Especially from a global company to do live,
right?
And so we get in the advertising business, and yes, there are a lot of synergies, and it certainly is something that our advertisers want to talk about, and they want that programming too.
And Netflix has done a pretty good job of building cultural moments through live. I mean, the big execution, obviously NFL.
Yes.
But I always forget which Paul brother.
Jake Paul and Mike Tyson. I remember
Yes.
being in Dallas for that fight, and it was so funny because none of us, the speculation in terms of the audience that was going to show up, it was a very, very wide variance.
Yes.
And then when we kind of broke the internet that night, it was, it was a lot of fun.
It was, I would call that a watershed moment in streaming.
Yes.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, so a couple questions while we wrap up here. What do you think marketers are still underestimating about Netflix?
Our ability to play in all areas of the funnel and how that attention can translate to specific outcomes.
Okay. So Netflix has changed so much in the last 5 years. What does Netflix look like 5 years from now?
Ooh, what does Netflix look like 5 years from now? I think even more, if you can believe it or not, even more personalized. As I think we see the, not the fragmentation of media, but there's content types that can go very deep, right? And being able to serve content types in kind of niche areas, I think you'll see us be able to do that as well as those big watershed cultural moments.
Okay. Well, sounds exciting. Amy Reinhard, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.